Okay, so here's our guidelines. We're going to use this as a method of walking through each step. And now the board configuration, or the board selection rather. For me, I've got the ESP32, but it's that WROOM board. Now, my board itself on the back, it shows that it's an ESP32 and it's a DEV kit V1. And that right there is going to play a important role in me getting the load, or getting the board loaded, because like I said earlier, if you don't have the file and the names matched up, it's going to fail in its installation. So for me, I've got this particular board and I have all of the files that are associated with it. We can look at the website here. This is the website. This is the manufacturer. Here's the website, and then these are all of its loads, or the firmware, and it goes from the version 0 up to the version 2.4. So that's something that you want to do, is to get all of your your bin files lined up, get everything ready for you to do your installation. Now let's look at the COM port. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the board, and as soon as I connect the board, you can hear it go through the process. And now this is the Silicon's Lab chip, UART chip. This one works easy. Windows has that particular driver, so it loads it with no problem. Now, if you have an issue with the drivers, you can pull up this program, which is called ZagDig. And ZagDig will allow you to scan through all of your ports. You hit the options, then you do list all devices, and now they'll show up on this pull down, and then you'll be able to select it and then choose whichever driver that you need for that particular board. And this will kind of force it on, versus Windows will just say nothing found, nothing found. So once you get over this hump, if you have it, then you can continue on with the installation. So I think this kind of gets a lot of people and creates problems for them. So let's go back here. And now we look, and we're talking about the drive tools now. The data cable, you have to watch out for the data cables, because there's power cables and data cables, and data cables will do both. Power cables will only provide power. If you get one of these cables into the mix, you could think that you have problems with your board itself or your COM ports, and you can go down a rabbit hole. You don't want to do that. You want to try to eliminate all the obstacles up front, so ensure that you've got the data cable. So now let's go and look at the second operation, which is the firmware and the software installation process. Now the firmware, there's two tools that we're going to go over. One of the tools is a web-based tool, and then the other one is the IDE tool, which is the Arduino version of its IDE interface. So let's start with the firmware, and we're going to look at the ESP tool. That particular tool is web-based, and let's pull it up. And now this particular interface has a few prerequisites. You've got to have either Chrome or Microsoft Edge. If you don't have those, it's not going to work, those two web browsers. And it says that you can also use the Internet Explorer, but Internet Explorer is hard to come by, or I think it's actually been decommissioned, so you're not going to find it anywhere. So you're stuck with, or no, I shouldn't say stuck. You're left with Microsoft Edge or Chrome. Now this is it. It's pulled up, and the way you access it's a web interface that accesses your serial port. If we go here and set up the baud rate for the 115K, and then let's connect to it, it's showing that this is our COM13. We connect, and now you can see here on the screen it reads the serial port, and now it detects the chip, it identifies the chip, and then you can see here is the board or the chip revision and the version 3. Now I've got a, you know what, let me do that right now. Let's disconnect this, and I've got a brand new chip and I want to make the comparison. And this chip is brand new, because that chip that you see here, I actually reflashed it, and I want to see what a new one looks like. So let's pull this off. Let's put this one on, and now let's read it. Port 3. Let's read it. Okay, so this is pretty much says the same thing. So I've got both of them here. This is a version 3. The board says version 1. So I guess it has the updated software. So we're good there. Now with this, we're going to do something a little different. Here we're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So typically you go through on a tutorial, the tutorial shows you everything in the perfect case scenario, and that's not the world that we live in. So what I'm going to do is show you how to reflash the board if you get in trouble. So because if we go through in a perfect case scenario and you get into a point that's saying, hey, I'm lost, I need to start over, you don't have any experience or knowledge of how to get out of trouble. So that's what I'm going to provide right up front. So let's connect in here. And now we see that it's running, it's access, and now it's into the board. So let's go in and erase this particular flash that's in here. And now normally it takes anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds. Yeah, 14 seconds here. It shows that the erase is complete. So we're going to now reflash the chip. And remember I showed you the website that had the release and the firmware, and then these are the 2 that I downloaded. And you take the zip file, you extract the file, and then put it into your disk or onto your disk drive, and that's what I did. I put it inside, and I'll show you the directory here. And here's in firmware. And now this is where I've got my firmware loaded. And what we can do is load, I'm going to load this 1.1 here. And then now this is the factory bin. So let's click on that. That was the location. Now let's choose the file here. So now what I'm going to do is choose a file. This is a file that we want to load, and that's a factory. So let's go OK. And then we're going to go to memory location 00. That's a start, and then we're going to program. So now it's writing to that board, and it's writing the firmware. So if you ever get into a problem, then this is the tool that's going to get you back to a starting point. And once you're at that starting point, then we can move forward. So I think this is a better approach to go this way and show you how to get into trouble, how to get out of trouble before you get into it. So now 44, 48, 51. So now this is the first tool that we're going to use, and then the second tool is going to be the Arduino IDE interface, and that IDE interface is what's going to load that OTA file. So we've got to get the OTA file in first, and then that's going to allow us to get the WIO bin file in next. So 100. Then it should go and do a verification, and then it should get out. So there. So now it says the hash of the data verified, and now it's leaving, so now it's logged out. Now one thing that you want to really pay attention to is make sure you disconnect after you use each one of these tools, because if not, you can have the tool sitting in the background and it actually has control over the COM port, and when you try to pull up another device or another system, it will not release it, and then you think you have troubles, and then you're off onto a rabbit, you're off into a rabbit, you're going down a rabbit hole, and it's not needed. So make sure you disconnect, and then what we'll do is close this out. That way we know for sure it's out, and then